Hi and welcome. My name is Jane. Today we're going to be talking about something small but powerful, the semiconductor chips. So let's get started. So these tiny silicon brains run the modern world these days, from the phones in your hands to the cars on the road and to the servers powering the internet. Semiconductors truly form the foundation of our digital age. But if you have heard of the recent chip shortages or the US-China chip war, you know that getting these chips made and delivered is a big challenge. So in the next 10 minutes, we'll be talking about global semiconductor supply chain, where we'll look at the economics, the geopolitics, and the technology behind it all. By design, semiconductors can sometimes conduct electricity and sometimes resist it. So that's how the switch circuits on and off, doing the math and memory work inside of your devices. They're everywhere. An average smartphone has about a dozen, while a smart car would have a thousand. I mean, more than a thousand, many thousands. So it's not an exaggeration to say that chips are in everything these days. In fact, in 2023, the world sold almost 1 trillion chips. There's about 100 chips per person on the planet. So, and the industry is growing with hundreds of billions in sales annually. And these chips are the engines of our digital economy with new innovations in AI, self-driving cars, and beyond. So, as tiny as they are a big deal for the economy. So saying so, they are economic powerhouse. The semiconductor industry's yearly sales are in the hundreds of billions, heading towards a trillion. And because chips go into practically everything, they have a multiplier effect on the economy. So when there's plenty of chips, then industries from smartphones to smart fridges can thrive. But if there's a shortage, we see factories idles and billions in losses. So remember during COVID-19 time and the recent shortage in car production, that was because they couldn't get enough chips, costing the auto industries over 200 billion of losses in a year. So it shows how a tiny component can become a big economic bottleneck. So chips truly fuel the modern economy, enabling the tech growth that we often take for granted. So they are as strategic today was oil in the past, acting like engines for innovation and economic progress, I would say. So what happened when that caused the shortage? Actually, a lot of things. So when COVID-19 hit, factories making chips had to slow down or close down, especially in places like Taiwan and South Korea. At the same time, we all started buying more gadgets to work from home, study from home, laptops, webcams, and game consoles. So the result, way more demand and way less supply. And it didn't stop there. Trade spat between the US and China meant Chinese companies had trouble getting certain chips, pushing more orders onto Taiwan TSMC, South Korea Samsung, who were already maxed out. Then the nature threw some curveballs. There was a drought in Taiwan, threatening the water supply needed for chip fabrication, and the icy storm in Texas knocked out several chip plants for weeks. And even a fire in a Japanese factory took out a chunk of a car monocontroller production. So speaking of bad luck, all this led to a domino effect, and analysts counted at least 169 different industries hit by the chip crunch. At the same time, it was also a very good wake-up call for us to really look at our chip supply chain. Now let's look at the geopolitics, because chip is not just about business, it's about power. So the ability to make the fastest, smartest chips isn't just an economic advantage, it's a strategic one for a country. So these are the chips that go into supercomputers, advanced fighter jets, AI, you name it. So leaders in Washington, Beijing, Brussels, and elsewhere are laser focused on semiconductors. We have heard of phrases like chip war in the news. The US and China especially are in a bit of an arms races over chips. US has been cutting off China's access to top-tier chip technology, investing to boost its own, while China is investing hundreds of billions to become self-sufficient. And then there's Taiwan and South Korea. These two are like the MVPs of chip manufacturing, thanks to companies like TSMC and Samsung. So in fact, a huge share of the world's most advanced chips come from Taipei and Seoul. So this gives these countries economic leverage and some protection. People talk about Taiwan's silicon shield because the world needs Taiwan chips so badly that dependency might deter conflict. Of course, it is also a double-edged sword. It means that Taiwan is now a hotspot for US-China rivalry. Auto semiconductors have become a new form of geopolitical currency. where governments are forming alliance as a bit of like a tech club to make sure that they and their friends have the chip know-how and their rivals don't. Well, let's talk about scale. Modern chips have billions of transistors, and the tiniest features are measured in nanometers. We're talking about features smaller than many viruses. It's like doing precision surgery on structures far smaller than a wavelength of light. So tools needed are mind-blowing. For example, the machines that print those tiny circuits using extreme ultraviolet light cost more than a jumbo jet, and only one company on the planet knows how to build them, which is the ASML in Netherlands. So just getting one of those machines to work is a marvel of physics and engineering, and means making cutting-edge chips is incredibly expensive. You need ultra clean rooms and extreme pure materials, and as well as an army of PhD engineers. That's why only a handful of players are in that top league. So others like Europe and China are finding out even tens of billions of dollars don't guarantee success if you don't have the decades of experience. Also, there's a shortage of silicon transistors. That means that improvement is getting harder, requiring like new tricks like stacking chips in 3D or using new materials as replacement. So every new chip is an achievement that pushes against the laws of physics. So no wonder chips have such a high barrier of entry, and that's why collaboration is more possible for countries. While it's truly a team effort among countries to make a high-end chip, but this global dance meant that each player in each country should work together. But now with the political winds, global trust has been shaken by trade wars and security fears. So instead of one war spanning supply, we hear about tech decoupling. Countries are saying we need our own chips made on our own soil, or at least by our close friends. It's understandable, but if we go too far down this road, we risk breaking the very system that made fast innovation possible. So imagine each region duplicating expensive R&D in parallel, or not sharing results. Progress could slow and cost would surely be high. So that's not sustainable. There's a real balancing act here. The likely scenario is that we'll see a tighter-knit region partnership, like minded countries pulling resources together, such as US, EU, Japan, Taiwan, working together on joint research, while China tries to do it all alone. So it's not a complete global free-for-all anymore, but it can also neither be monopolized, because the capacity and the knowledge is just too distributed for one nation to do it all efficiently. So speaking of the vulnerabilities, what can we do about it? One approach is, of course, geographic diversification. So meaning that building more fabs in more countries. That's partially why TSMC is opening plants in the US and Japan. And another approach could be redundancy, having multiple suppliers for critical inputs. But that is a bit challenging given that some of the things are monopolized by design. For example, only the ASML makes EUV machines, and only a couple of companies refine the ultra specialty neon gas needed. And we are also likely to see more coordination among allies, for example, the US, EU, and Japan discussing on how to assist each other if one region's supply is disrupted. So there's an idea of moving away for just-in-time inventory for chips, maybe keeping a strategic reserve of critical semiconductors like we do for oil. But of course, that's going to jack up the price. But I think, look at it this way, it's like paying a insurance premium to avoid the losses later on. It's a balancing act. So moving forwards, what's going to happen next? The semiconductor story is entering a new chapter. The road ahead might have some bumps like geopolitics, economics, and physics. But I'm optimistic. Sure, nations are in competition, but at the end of the day, scientists and engineers around the world still talk to each other. Research labs in different countries still publish papers together, and there's still an international community pushing chip technology forward, whether it's conferences or joint projects. So if we manage to balance competition with cooperation, I suspect these chips will continue to thrive, powering our next generation. So that's all for today, and thank you for listening.